Hey everyone, tonight we're stepping into the secretive, seductive world of Japanese courtesans, women who were far more than entertainers, but artists, elite companions, and masters of intrigue, surviving unimaginable pressures. You're standing in Yoshiwara, Edo's famous red light district, where silk kimonos shimmer under lantern light, and every smile hides a secret. But here's the reality check. Beneath the glamour, these women faced a brutal truth. Pregnancy could end their careers, their lives, or both. You probably won't survive this world unscathed. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I'm doing here. Drop a comment with your location and local time. It's always wild to see who's joining us from where. Now, turn down the lights, maybe turn on the fan for some soft background music, and let's get started tonight. You step through the wooden gates of Yoshiwara, Edo's infamous red light district, and the air hits you like a perfumed slap thick with incense, sake, and the faint hum of shamisen strings. Lanterns sway above, casting a warm glow over narrow streets where men in silk robes stumble, laughing, and women glide like ghosts in towering Gita sandals. You're here, in the heart of 17th century Tokyo, where every corner feels like a stage, and the courtesans are the stars. But don't be fooled by the glitter. This isn't a fairy tale, it's a gilded cage, and the women inside are as trapped as they are dazzling. You follow a courtesan, her kimono, a cascade of crimson and gold, 12 layers heavy, each fold a testament to her status. She's not just a woman, she's a masterpiece, trained since childhood to dance, sing, and charm men who pay for the illusion of love. Her hair, pinned with enough combs to make your scalp ache, catches the light as she moves. But her smile, it's practiced, a mask for the world. You want to believe she's free, floating through this pleasure district like a cherry blossom on the wind. But the truth is heavier. She's owned by the brothel, by her contract, by the oiran, the overlord who counts her every coin. Yoshiwara wasn't built for freedom. It's a business, and these women are its product. You see, most courtesans didn't choose this life. They were sold as girls, some as young as 7, by families too poor to keep them. A sack of rice, a vague promise of opportunity, that's what it took to trade a daughter's future. Once here, they were molded into perfection. Poetry lessons, tea ceremonies, learning to laugh at a merchant's bad jokes about rice taxes. But perfection comes at a cost. Every kimono, every drop of hair oil, every hour spent training, it's all debt, piling up faster than a gambler's losses. By the time she's ready to serve clients, she owes more than she'll ever earn. And then there's the unspoken rule, the one that keeps you up at night: don't get pregnant. In Yoshiwara, a baby isn't a blessing, it's a defect. You're an investment, a walking fantasy, and pregnancy? That's a 9-month shutdown of the brothel's best asset. You can almost hear the oiran's fans snap shut in disapproval. The streets outside buzz with music and laughter, but inside, behind the paper screens, the courtesans whisper about darker things, remedies, risks, and the price of breaking the illusion. You try to imagine a world where a courtesan could cradle a child without fear, but that's a fantasy even Yoshiwara can't sell. Let's lighten the mood for a second. Imagine trying to walk in those Gita sandals. One wrong step, and you're not just falling. You're taking out a lantern, a client, and your dignity in one go. It's like trying to balance on stilts during an earthquake. But that's the gig. Look flawless, act weightless, be perfect, and perfection means control, especially over your body. Historians still debate whether the courtesans had any real agency in Yoshiwara. Some say they wielded power through charm. Others argue they were pawns in a silk-wrapped game. Either way, you're starting to see the truth. Every step, every smile, every note played on the shamisen is a performance, and the stakes are life and death. You notice something odd as you watch her forsake for a client. Her movements precise, but her eyes distant. The teacup she uses is cracked, barely holding together, yet she serves from it anyway. It's a small, strange detail, but it feels like a metaphor for her life, beautiful, fragile, and held together by sheer will. You want to ask her name, her story, but the rules of Yoshiwara are clear. She's not a person, she's a dream, and dreams don't get to have babies. As you linger in the lantern light, you realize this world is built on denial. Denial of pain, of humanity, of anything that doesn't fit the fantasy. And yet, these women survive, carrying secrets heavier than their kimonos, their strength hidden in plain sight. You're not ready to leave yet, but the night is young and the shadows are deep. The courtesans move like poetry, but beneath the silk there's a story of iron and blood. You're starting to understand. In Yoshiwara, beauty is a weapon, survival is an art, and every courtesan is a warrior in disguise. Oh, and here's a little joke to keep you grounded. Why did the courtesan bring a fan to every meeting? Because it's the only thing keeping her cool when the clients start talking about their deep love for haiku. You smirk, but the truth lingers. Her life is no laughing matter. You're still in Yoshiwara, the air thick with jasmine and the clink of sake cups. But now you're behind the scenes, where the lanterns don't quite reach. You're standing in a narrow room, paper walls thin enough to hear whispers from the next chamber. A courtesan sits before a mirror, her reflection, a study in control lips painted red, hair pinned like a crown. But her hands tremble as she ties her obi, the wide sash that binds her kimono and her life. You're here to learn the rules of her world, the ones written in ink and enforced with shame. These are the contracts that chain her, and they're as tight as the silk around her waist. When you were sold into this life, maybe at 7, maybe 10, you didn't sign anything. You were too young to read the fine print, but it was there, invisible, binding you to the brothel. The deal was simple. Your beauty, your talent, your body, all belong to the oiran, the brothel's overseer. You're an investment, like a prized horse or a rare vase, except you're expected to smile while being traded. Every kimono you wear, debt. The calligraphy lessons to impress poets, debt. The rice you eat to keep you alive for another night's work, you guessed it, debt. By the time you're old enough to charm a samurai, you owe more than a lifetime's wages. The contract isn't just about money, it's about control. You sleep when they tell you, serve who they choose, smile when you want to scream, and the biggest rule, the one whispered like a curse, don't get pregnant. A baby is a glitch in the system, a flaw in the fantasy. You're here to be a dream, not a mother. And pregnancy means you're out of commission. No tea ceremonies, no shamisen performances, no profit. You can almost hear the oiran's abacus clicking, calculating the loss. In 1688, the Tokugawa shogunate tightened regulations on Yoshiwara, making it clear courtesans were property, and any defect like pregnancy could void the deal. That's not history talking. That's a sword hanging over your head. You watch her adjust her obi, pulling it tighter, and you wonder how she breathes under all that silk and expectation. The clients, drunk samurai, lonely merchants, poets who think their metaphors are foreplay, don't care about your contract. They pay for your laughter, your elegance, your ability to make them feel like the only man in Edo. But if you slip up, if your body betrays you with a child, the blame falls on you. Careless, they'll call you, as if you chose this life or its consequences. You try to imagine sneaking away for a day off, maybe sipping tea without someone watching your every move. Good luck. The brothel's eyes are everywhere, and freedom is a fairy tale. Here's a little humor to cut the tension. Why did the courtesan's contract include a clause about smiling? Because frowning might scare off a client, but a scowl could start a revolution. You chuckle, but the weight of her world pulls you back. Historians still debate whether these contracts were slavery or a twisted kind of employment. Some argue the women had leverage through their charm. Others say they were caged by debt and fear. Either way, you see the truth in her careful movements, the way she checks her reflection like it's a battlefield. She's not just preparing for clients, she's preparing for survival. You notice something strange, a tiny ink stain on her sleeve, barely visible under the silk. It's odd, out of place in her perfect appearance, like a crack in a porcelain mask. Maybe she was writing a poem, a letter she'll never send, or just marking time in a life that doesn't belong to her. You want to ask, but the rules are clear, questions are dangerous, and silence is safer. The brothel doesn't care about her dreams or her fears, only her ability to perform. And pregnancy? That's the one mistake she can't smile her way out of. If her belly grows, the contract tightens like a noose, and the Oiron's fan will snap shut with a verdict. Fix it, or you're done. You linger in the room, watching her pin one last comb into her hair, her fingers steady now, her mask complete. She's ready to face the night, to charm men who'll never know her name, let alone her pain. But you know the truth. Every step she takes is a tightrope walk, and one misstep, a missed cycle, a morning's nausea could send her falling. The lanterns outside flicker, the music plays on, but here, in this small room, you feel the weight of a world that demands perfection and punishes humanity. She's a courtesan, yes, but she's also a prisoner, and the contract is her chain. You step out of that dim room, the scent of camellia oil lingering on your skin like a half-forgotten kiss, and into the main hall where the real show begins. The air hums with low voices, the clink of porcelain cups, and the soft strum of a shamisen echoing off the wooden beams. Lanterns cast flickering shadows on the tatami mats, making everything feel like a dream that's about to turn sharp. You're here to meet the men who keep this world spinning, the clients, the ones who pay for the fantasy but vanish like smoke when reality knocks. They're the samurai with their top knots and hidden swords, the merchants counting their coins, the poets lost in their own metaphors. But don't get too close. These guys are experts at the art of the quick exit, especially if a courtesan's belly starts to swell. You spot one now, a burly samurai slouched against a low table, his kimono slightly askew from too much sake, his laughter booming like distant thunder. He's the type who struts in with tales of battlefield glory, but really, he's here to escape his nagging wife back home. He flirts with the courtesan across from him, her fan fluttering like a butterfly's wings, hiding her practiced smile. You watch as he leans in, whispering something about the moon's reflection on the Sumida River, thinking it's romantic. But you know better, this is transaction, not passion. The courtesans are trained to make every man feel like a hero, pouring sake with graceful hands, reciting poetry that makes his ego swell. Yet, if she hints at trouble, like a missed cycle or morning queasiness, he'll bolt faster than a fox in a trap. These clients come from all walks, emotionally starved merchants who've made fortunes in rice or silk, but can't buy real affection. Poets who think their haiku about cherry blossoms count as seduction. Even the occasional nobleman slumming it for thrills. You weave through the room, the floor creaking under your feet, the air warm and sticky with incense smoke that clings to your clothes. One merchant, round-faced and red-cheeked, boasts about his latest shipment from Kyoto, his hand grazing the courtesan's sleeve as if by accident. She's all elegance, nodding and laughing softly, but her eyes dart to the door, calculating. These men aren't here for commitment. They're here for escape, for the illusion that Yoshiwara sells so well. And when that illusion cracks, say, with the news of a baby on the way, they disappear. No letters, no gifts, just gone, like your motivation on a Monday morning. You pause by a poet, his ink-stained fingers clutching a scroll, murmuring verses about fleeting beauty. He's the romantic type, or so he thinks, comparing the courtesan to a wilting flower. But here's the sarcasm dripping in. Nothing says true love like paying by the hour and then ghosting when life gets real. You almost chuckle at the irony these guys wax poetic about impermanence. Yet they're shocked when actions have lasting consequences. Historians still debate whether these client-courtesan relationships ever held genuine emotion, or if it was all just a scripted play in silk and shadow. Some argue the women wielded subtle power, manipulating affections for favors. Others say it was pure exploitation, with men holding all the cards. And speaking of odd details, did you know some clients brought bizarre gifts to woo their favorites? One story whispers of a merchant who gifted a live turtle, claiming it symbolized longevity in their love. Imagine trying to flirt while a reptile crawls across the tatami. Romantic, right? Or awkward, as a blind date with your ex's cousin. You smirk, but the reality sinks in. These men vanish because acknowledging a child means scandal. A samurai might lose face with his clan, a merchant his business deals, a poet his fragile muse. In 1701, during the infamous Akko incident, better known as the 47 Ronin Street Ori, a group of masterless samurai plotted revenge right under Yoshiwara's lanterns, using the district as cover. That's your canonical event. While they drank and caroused with courtesans, hiding their true intentions, it shows how Yoshiwara was a hub for secrets, where men like them could indulge without repercussions. But for the women, no such luck. You feel the room's pulse quicken as more clients arrive, the door sliding open with a soft whoosh, letting in a breeze that carries the faint scent of rain on cobblestones outside. A courtesan glides past you, her geta clacking rhythmically, leading a tipsy poet to a private chamber. You follow at a distance, the hallway narrowing, walls adorned with ukiyo-e prints of floating worlds that mirror this one beautiful, ephemeral, cruel. In these moments, the men pour out their souls, or at least pretend to, sharing dreams of glory or complaints about taxes. But if pregnancy enters the picture, it's like flipping a switch. They'll slip away, maybe leaving a few coins as help, but more often, nothing. You imagine her alone later, the sake's warmth fading, wondering why her whispers of consequence fell on deaf ears. Here's a light-hearted joke to ease the heaviness. Why do Yoshiwara clients make terrible fathers? Because they're experts at the now you see me, now you don't trick poof gone before the diaper changes start. You let out a soft laugh, but it fades as you think of the isolation. These men aren't villains in capes. They're just products of a society that values reputation over responsibility. A child from a courtesan? That's illegitimate, a stain on the family scroll. So they ghost, leaving her to face the brothel's wrath alone. You stand there, the shamisen's melody winding down, feeling the weight of unspoken words. The clients laugh, drink, vanish, but the courtesans remain, carrying the burden in silence. You turn back toward the main hall, the incense smoke curling like question marks in the air. Remember that cracked teacup from earlier? It's like these men pretty on the surface, but fragile when pressed. They come for the dream, but when it turns real, they're out. The night deepens, the lanterns dimming slightly, and you realize, in Yoshiwara, the clients are the fleeting ones, ghosts in human form, while the women endure. But endurance has its limits, and as you watch another man slip away into the shadows, you wonder what happens when the illusion finally shatters. You slip back into the main hall, the tatami mats cool under your feet, the air still buzzing with that mix of incense and sake that clings to your skin like a second layer. The shamisen's melody fades into a soft hum, almost like it's whispering secrets of its own, and you find yourself drawn to a corner where a courtesan sits alone, her fan half raised, staring at nothing. She's the picture of elegance, her kimono pooling around her like spilled moonlight. But there's a tension in her posture, a slight hunch that doesn't belong. You lean in closer, the lantern light flickering across her face, and that's when it hits you. This isn't just fatigue from a long night. It's fear. Deep, gnawing fear. Because in Yoshiwara, getting pregnant isn't a joyful surprise. It's a hidden crisis. A ticking bomb wrapped in silk that could shatter everything she's built. You imagine it starting small. Maybe a wave of nausea during a tea ceremony, blaming it on bad sashimi or too much sake the night before. But as days turn to weeks, the signs pile up. Your kimono feels tighter around the waist. Your energy dips like a lantern running low on oil. And that monthly cycle? It's late, then gone. In this world of illusions, where every courtesan is supposed to be a flawless fantasy, pregnancy is the ultimate betrayal. It's not just your body changing, it's the entire system crumbling. Clients come here to escape reality, to pretend they're the center of a beautiful, child-free dream. A swelling belly? That's a rude reminder that actions have consequences, and no one's paying top coin to flirt with morning sickness or swollen feet. You try to picture a courtesan waddling through the halls in her get-a-talk about a plot twist nobody asked for. The brothel sees you as a product. Remember that contract from earlier? The one piling debt like autumn leaves? Pregnancy puts you out of service for months. No dancing, no poetry recitals, no charming the next samurai with tales of cherry blossoms. That's lost revenue, a dent in the Oiran's abacus that won't be forgiven. You feel the weight of it now, sitting beside her, the room's warmth turning stifling, like the air itself is pressing down. In 1750, during the Kanzei reforms, under the Tokugawa shogunate, stricter controls were placed on Yoshiwara to curb moral decay, including harsher punishments for courtesans who disrupted business, pregnancy being the prime offender. That's your canonical event. Reforms meant to clean up the district, but really just tightening the noose on women already trapped. You watch her fan flutter faster, a subtle sign of panic, and you wonder how many nights she's lain awake counting the risks. Demotion is the mildest punishment reassigned to the lower ranks, serving the roughest clients, the ones with calloused hands and zero poetry in their souls. Or worse, exile, tossed out with nothing but your kimono and a reputation so tarnished, even the street vendors won't look you in the eye. The baby, in this floating world, there's no room for innocence. It shatters the allure, turns you from glittering oiron to a liability. Historians still debate whether pregnancy was rare in Yoshiwara due to herbal preventatives or just underreported. Out of fear, some say the women had more control than we think. Others argue the system forced silence on every level. And here's an odd detail to chew on. Some courtesans kept tiny talismans hidden in their obi, like a folded paper crane, inscribed with a prayer to Canaan, the goddess of mercy, hoping it would ward off conception. Imagine tucking a origami bird next to your skin, believing it could fold away, fate whimsical, almost cute, until you remember the desperation behind it. You almost smile at the image, but the sarcasm creeps in. Yeah, because nothing says reliable birth control like a paper bird in your belt. Modern birth control would blow their minds. But back then, it was all folklore and crossed fingers. You shift on the mat, the straw rustling softly, like it's joining the conversation with a whisper. The crisis isn't just physical, it's emotional espionage. You have to keep performing, flirting with the very men who might have caused this, all while hiding the changes. Tighten your obi a notch more, walk with extra grace to mask the fatigue, blame any slip on a touch of the vapors. It's exhausting, like running a marathon in 12 layers of silk. And the scandal, oh, the scandal. Word spreads faster than lantern fire in these close quarters. One whisper from a maid emptying chamber pots, and suddenly everyone's eyes are on you, judging, calculating. The brothel isn't family. It's a business, and you're the faulty merchandise. Lighten the mood with a joke. Why is pregnancy in Yoshiwara like a bad haiku? Because it's short, unexpected, and ruins the perfect rhythm everyone was enjoying. You chuckle softly, the sound blending with the distant laughter from another room, but it doesn't erase the heaviness. These women aren't weak. They're warriors in rouge, fighting a battle no one sees. You think back to that cracked teacup from the first night, fragile, yet still serving. That's her now, holding it together, while the world demands perfection. But perfection cracks under pressure. And as you watch her rise to greet another client, her smile flawless, you feel the crisis building. It's not just a baby. It's the end of the illusion, the career, the fragile life she's carved out. You linger in the shadows, the incense curling lazily upward, carrying unspoken prayers. The shamisen picks up again, a melancholy tune that tugs at something deep inside. Pregnancy here isn't a miracle. It's a curse, turning dreams to dust. And yet, she endures, fan in hand, ready for the next act. But how long can the secret hold? The hall feels smaller now, the walls closing in like judgmental eyes. You want to warn her, to say something, but in Yoshiwara, silence is survival. The crisis simmers, hidden but hot, and you realize this isn't just her story, it's a warning, whispered through time. You ease deeper into the shadows of the brothel, the tatami mats whispering under your feet like they're sharing gossip, and the faint scent of cherry blossom incense wrapping around you like a soft blanket. The hall's warmth presses in, heavy and humid, making your skin prickle as if the air itself knows the secret you're about to uncover. You've felt the crisis building, that hidden storm in a courtesan's belly. And now you're stepping into the underground world of whispers and disguises, where pregnancy isn't announced with joy, but buried under layers of code, fake smiles, and desperate rituals. It's a covert operation in high heels, or rather, those towering geta that could trip you into next week if you're not careful. You glide along the narrow corridor, paper screens glowing faintly from lantern light behind them, hearing muffled voices, courtesans, exchanging remedies, not in plain words, but in riddles that sound like poetry. You pause by a screen, your ear close enough to feel the warmth radiating through the thin paper and catch fragments of conversation. Try the tea with 3 leaves, not 5, 5's for headaches, 3's for, well, you know. It's all coded, passed down, like haunted heirlooms from one woman to another. Survivors teaching the new girls how to navigate the minefield. Morning sickness? Blame it on bad shellfish from last night's feast. Laugh it off with a flutter of your fan. Fatigue dragging you down like a wet kimono? Just say you're weary from dancing under the moon, huh? As if anyone believes that after entertaining a string of sake-soaked merchants, you have to keep working, keep performing, pouring tea, and reciting verses about fleeting beauty, all while your body screams for rest. It's emotional spy craft, smiling sweetly at the client who probably caused this mess, without letting a single hint slip. The odd detail hits you like a misplaced hairpin. Some courtesans became experts at reading their cycles by tasting their own sweat. Salty meant one thing, bitter another, a bizarre folklore trick whispered in the bathhouses. Imagine licking your arm like a salty pretzel just to confirm your fears, talk about a flavor no one asked for. You almost chuckle at the absurdity, but the desperation behind it quiets you. These women turn their bodies into code breakers, decoding missed periods as stress or pissing off another god, as they joke in hushed tones. But if you're sure, the real act begins. Alter your walk to hide the subtle changes. Tighten that obi just a bit more. Risk fainting over, showing even the faintest bump. Vanity? No. Survival. You practice in front of a bronze mirror, adjusting your posture until you look as serene as a still pond, even as chaos brews inside. Historians still debate whether these hiding techniques were born from collective wisdom or sheer necessity. Some say the courtesans formed secret sisterhoods for support. Others argue the brothel's surveillance, forced isolation, turning every woman into her own island of secrets. Either way, you feel the isolation now, the way the air seems thicker, lonelier, as if the walls are listening. In 1765, during the Meiwa era, a massive fire ravaged Yoshiwara, destroying brothels and forcing courtesans to flee into the streets. Many hid pregnancies during the chaos, using the disaster as cover to escape or resolve their situations without scrutiny. That's your canonical event. The Great Meiwa Fire, where flames lit up the district like a hellish lantern festival. And in the smoke, women whispered remedies louder than ever, binding their secrets tighter amid the ashes. You slip into a small alcove, the space cramped and dim, lit only by a single candle, flickering like it's nervous too. Here, the disguises go beyond words. Courtesans layer extra fabric under their kimonos to mask shapes, or feign illnesses that explain away symptoms without raising alarms. A missed cycle? Oh, just the vapors from too much incense, darling. You have to endure it all. Clients pawing at you, demanding the same flirtations, while you fight the urge to retch or collapse. It's a war against your own biology, waged in silence, with allies few and far between. The younger girls watch and learn, their eyes wide, absorbing the codes like sponges add ginger to speed things up. Don't overdo the safflower, or your skin burns like regret. Lighten the load with a joke. Why do courtesans make great spies? Because they can hide a whole crisis behind a fan and still serve tea without spilling a drop or a secret. You smirk, the candle flame dancing in response. But the sarcasm fades into that ASMR hush, the soft rustle of silk as another courtesan passes by, her geta clacking rhythmically. Another quip. Imagine explaining this to a modern doctor. Doc, I think I'm pregnant, but I have to pretend it's indigestion from too many rice taxes discussions. Hilarious until you remember the stakes. Discovery means demotion, punishment, or worse. You touch the paper screen, feeling its fragility, much like the balance these women maintain one wrong whisper, and it all tears apart. The third joke sneaks in like a sly fox. What's a courtesan's favorite magic trick? Making a bump disappear with nothing but willpower and a really tight obi abracadabra. Now you're flat as a haiku scroll. You let out a soft laugh, the sound blending with the distant shamisen. But it underscores the heartbreak. These rituals aren't just remedies, they're lifelines, passed in the dead of night, behind fans and fake laughter. You feel the panic now, the way it coils in your chest like incense smoke. Thick and unrelenting, the world outside buzzes with music and merriment. But here, in this secret realm, it's all about endurance, hiding the truth until you can't anymore, praying the gods turn a blind eye. You step back into the corridor, the air cooler now, carrying a hint of rain from outside, as if the sky weeps for what's hidden. The disguises work for a time, but biology doesn't bow to codes or whispers. You glance back at the alcove, the candle guttering low, and wonder how many nights end like this alone, plotting, surviving. The crisis isn't over, it's just veiled, waiting for the next move in this deadly dance. The shamisen picks up again, a melancholy note hanging in the air, pulling you forward into the unknown. You're still in the dim corridors of Yoshiwara, where the air feels like it's holding its breath, thick with the scent of camellia oil and secrets. The distant pluck of a shamisen weaves through the walls, but it's the silence between the notes that grabs you, heavy with unspoken fears. You're crouched now, hidden behind a lacquered screen, watching a courtesan slip into a tiny room with a small wooden tray in her hands. On it, a steaming cup of tea, not the kind you sip to unwind, but a brew that could burn your insides as easily as it might save you. This is the world of herbal roulette, where desperation brews in teacups, and every sip is a gamble between freedom and ruin. You're about to see what happens when a courtesan, cornered by biology, turns to nature's most dangerous remedies to keep her secret hidden. The tea isn't jasmine or green. It's a murky blend of mugwort, safflower, and licorice root herbs that sound innocent until you learn the doses are strong enough to make your stomach flip like a bad festival cartwheel. You watch her clutch the cup, her fingers trembling just enough to ripple the surface, her eyes fixed on it like it's a crystal ball, with only bad news. These brews are legendary in Yoshiwara, passed down in whispers like cursed recipes. Steep it long, drink it hot, they say, and pray to every god you know. The goal? End the pregnancy before anyone notices, before the Iran's sharp eyes catch the curve under your kimono or the maids start gossiping about your sudden taste for pickled plums. But the risk is as real as the reward. These teas can cramp, bleed, or worse, send you into a fever that feels like a sneak preview of the afterlife. You inch closer, the tatami creaking softly under your weight, and notice something odd. A small charm tied to the teapot's handle, a red thread woven with a tiny bell, said to ward off bad spirits or bad outcomes. It's a strange, almost childlike detail in this grim ritual, like putting a bow on a guillotine. You want to laugh at the absurdity, but the weight of her choice chokes it back. Historians still debate whether these herbal concoctions were effective or just placebo desperation. Some argue they worked often enough to be a staple. Others say the side effects were so brutal they were more punishment than cure. Either way, you're watching a woman bet her life on a cup of tea, and it's not exactly a cozy moment. In 1690, during the Genroku era, a notorious incident shook Yoshiwara when a high-ranking courtesan died after overdosing on a safflower brew, her death hushed up as sudden illness to avoid scandal. That's your canonical event, a stark reminder that these remedies weren't just folklore, they were lethal gambles in a world with no safety net. You feel the room shrink, the walls pressing in as she lifts the cup, her lips parting hesitantly. The tea's steam curls upward like a warning, and you can almost taste its bitterness, sharp and metallic, like regret steeped overnight. She drinks in quick, desperate gulps, wincing as it burns down her throat, hoping it'll burn away the problem too. But here's the kicker. She has to keep working. Tonight, she'll be back in the main hall, pouring sake for a merchant who smells like old fish, smiling as if her insides aren't screaming. Lighten the mood for a second. Imagine trying to explain this to a modern barista. Yeah, make it quick, but instead of a latte, can you whip up something that might end a pregnancy, or just make me see ghosts? You smirk, but it fades fast. The sarcasm doesn't erase the stakes. Another joke. Why did the courtesan bring her own teapot? Because the brothel's blend comes with a side of suspicion served cold. You let out a soft chuckle, the sound swallowed by the quiet. The tea might work, or it might not. If it fails, she's on to the next rung of this terrifying ladder. Stronger herbs, shadier methods, bigger risks. Some girls faint from the cramps. Others hallucinate, seeing spirits in the steam. And the worst part? No one talks about it openly. It's all coded glances, vague warnings. Don't use too much mugwort, or you'll glow like a lantern. Science? Superstition? It's a disaster cocktail, served without a chaser. You shift, the floor creaking again, and catch her wiping her mouth. The cup now empty, her face pale but composed. She's a master of masks, trained to hide pain behind powder and rouge. But you see the truth in her eyes, a flicker of fear, like a candle about to gutter out. Here's a third quip to keep things light. What's a courtesan's least favorite tea party? The one where the guest of honor is her own biology, crashing the event uninvited. You smile, but it's bittersweet, like the ginger she might have added to speed things up. The brothel's rhythm hums on outside laughter, clinking cups, a shamisen's wail. But in here, it's just her, the tea, and the ticking clock. Success means she keeps her place. Failure means she's one step closer to ruin. You linger, the candlelight casting long shadows that dance like specters on the walls. The tea is gone, but its work is just beginning, and so is hers. She'll need to glide back into the hall, her kimono perfect, her smile unflinching, while her body fights a silent war. Remember that cracked teacup from the first night? It's her now holding together, barely, Under pressure no one sees. The incense curls upward, carrying prayers she can't voice. And you realize, this isn't just about hiding a pregnancy. It's about hiding herself, her humanity, in a world that demands she be nothing less than divine. The shamisen plays on, a mournful note lingering, pulling you deeper into her story. You're tucked away in a narrow alley just outside the brothel's walls, where the glow of Yoshiwara's lanterns barely reaches, and the air carries the damp chill of a late Edo night. The distant clatter of Geta sandals and drunken laughter fades, replaced by the soft rustle of leaves and the occasional drip of rain from a nearby roof. You're following a courtesan, her silhouette barely visible under a plain cloak, nothing like the vibrant kimono she wore hours ago. She moves quickly, head low, clutching a small bundle to her chest, a hairpin maybe, or a silk sash, payment for what's about to happen. You're entering the world of the basen, the midwives of shadows, women who don't advertise but whose names are whispered like spells among the courtesans. When the teas fail and the fear tightens its grip, these are the ones you seek, the grim saviors who deal in blood and silence. You reach a low, unmarked door, the wood weathered and uninviting, like it's daring you to knock. The courtesan hesitates, her breath visible in the cool air, then raps softly, 3 quick taps, a code. The door creaks open, revealing a figure cloaked in shadow, her face half hidden, eyes sharp as a blade. This is the basan, an old woman by Yoshiwara's standards, maybe a former courtesan herself, now retired to the edges of society. No pension, no glory, just a knack for fixing problems no one talks about. You slip inside, the room dim, lit by a single candle that smells of wax and something sharper, like boiled herbs. The tools are crude rags, a chipped bowl of steaming water, a bundle of sticks and metal that look more like torture devices than medical instruments. No anesthesia, no sterile gloves, just grit and a prayer to Canon for mercy. You watch her hand over a hairpin, its lacquered surface catching the candlelight, an odd detail that feels like a sacrifice, a piece of her beauty traded for survival. The basan tucks it away without a word, her fingers calloused, steady, like she's done this 100 times. Payment isn't always coin. Sometimes it's trinkets, a sachet of rare perfume, or a promise of silence. One story whispers of a basan who wore a client's gifted hairpin every day, like a badge of her trade, strange, almost defiant in its openness. You feel the air grow heavier, the weight of what's about to happen pressing down. The courtesan lies on a thin mat, her breathing shallow, eyes fixed on the ceiling, as the basan mutters something low, maybe a prayer, maybe a warning. This isn't a birth, it's an ending, and it's as brutal as it is secret. In 1710, during the Hoei era, a crackdown on illegal practices in Yoshiwara led to the arrest of several basan, their services, exposed after a botched procedure, left a courtesan dead, her death recorded as fever to save face. That's your canonical event, a grim reminder that these shadow midwives operated in a world where discovery meant doom for everyone involved. Historians still debate whether these women were saviors or opportunists. Some see them as lifelines for desperate courtesans, others as profiteers of misery, charging steep prices for risky work. Either way, you're watching a transaction born of necessity, where trust is forged in candlelight and trembling hands. The risks are obscene infection, hemorrhaging, infertility, or worse. Some girls never return to the brothel, their absence explained away with a shrug. She caught a fever. Reality caught her, and she didn't survive. You shift, the floorboards groaning softly, and try to lighten the mood with a joke. Why don't Bassan advertise? Because their Yelp reviews would be a mix of 5 stars for silence and 1 star for, ouch, never again. You smirk, but it's hollow. The candles flicker, mocking your attempt at levity. Another quip. Imagine the Bassan's business card. Discreet fixes, no questions asked. Bring your own rags. You force a chuckle, but the scene pulls you back. The courtesan winces, her hands gripping the mat, and you realize she's not just risking her body, she's risking her future. If this works, she might return to the brothel, smile intact. If it doesn't, she's a ghost story waiting to happen. No legal recourse, no complaints to file. What would she say? Hello, magistrate. I broke the law to keep my job in a pleasure district. Arrest me, please? Here's a third joke to keep the rhythm. Why do Bassan work at night? Because even the moon knows better than to watch this kind of pain. You let out a soft laugh, the sound swallowed by the room's oppressive quiet. The Bassan moves with precision, her face unreadable, offering no comfort, just efficiency. It's not cruelty, it's survival, for both of them. You think back to that cracked teacup from the first night fragile, still serving, just like this woman on the mat. The procedure ends in silence. The courtesan pale but alive, for now. She rises, adjusts her cloak, and slips back into the night, her secret buried in this dark room. You linger, the candle sputtering, its light barely holding back the shadows. The basin cleans her tools, humming a tune that feels older than the city itself. You step outside, the air cold now, the rain heavier, washing away the traces of her visit. The lanterns of Yoshiwara glow in the distance, promising beauty, hiding pain. This wasn't a choice. It was a last resort, a desperate deal made in the dark. The courtesan's footsteps fade, and you wonder how many others will knock on this door, trading hairpins for hope, silence for survival. The night feels heavier now, the shamisen's distant notes carrying a mournful weight, pulling you toward the next chapter of this shadowed world. You're back in the heart of Yoshiwara, but the glamour feels distant now, like a song you can barely hear over the rain pattering on the tiled roofs. You're following a courtesan through a narrow back room, the air thick with steam and the faint scent of mugwort, sharp and medicinal. She's kneeling by a wooden tub, its water so hot it's practically simmering, tendrils of steam curling upward like spirits escaping. This isn't a spa day, it's the boiling bath method, a desperate, whispered remedy that promises to end a pregnancy by turning your body into a furnace. You feel the heat from here, prickling your skin, making your breath catch. In Yoshiwara, where every choice is a gamble, this is one of the riskiest, a scalding act of survival that could save her or break her. You watch her test the water with a trembling hand, wincing as it burns her fingertips. The idea is simple but brutal. Soak in a bath so hot it shocks your body into rejecting the pregnancy. Think of it as a sauna designed by a sadist with a grudge against biology. They say, stay in until you're dizzy if you faint. It's working. Medical advice straight from the Dark Ages, right? She adds a handful of dried mugwort to the water. There's that herb again, the Swiss Army knife of Yoshiwara's desperation toolkit. Some swear by sake first, to dull the pain, or maybe just to make the whole thing feel less like self-torture. You see her pour a small cup, her hands steady despite the fear in her eyes, and drink it fast, like it's courage in liquid form. The odd detail catches your eye. A small stone, smooth and river-worn, sits by the tub's edge, a talisman she clutches between soaks, as if it holds the power to make this work, or at least keep her sane. It's strange, almost childlike, like believing a rock can rewrite fate. You want to laugh, but the weight of it stops you. Historians still debate whether these baths were based on folklore or actual physiological effects. Some say the heat could trigger miscarriage in early stages. Others argue it was just dangerous superstition, more likely to kill than cure. Either way, you're watching her climb into the tub, her kimono discarded, her breath hitching as the scalding water bites her skin. She's risking burns, shock, even heat stroke, all to keep her place in this silk-wrapped prison. In 1720, during the Kyoho era, a Yoshiwara brothel was fined after a courtesan died from overheating in a bath. Her death quietly recorded as an accident to avoid questions. That's your canonical event, a stark reminder that these methods weren't just risky, they were deadly, and the brothel's response was to sweep it under the tatami. You feel the steam now, heavy and oppressive, like it's pressing the truth into your lungs. She stays in, her face flushed, eyes squeezed shut, breathing through the pain like it's a performance she's rehearsed. The goal is discretion. No tools, no midwives, just water and willpower. But discretion comes at a cost. Some faint mid-bath, dragged out unconscious. Others die quietly in hidden rooms, their absence explained away while the brothel's lanterns keep burning. Lighten the mood for a moment. Imagine trying to pitch this to a modern spa. Come for the relaxation, stay for the internal barbecue, you smirk. But it's fleeting, the steam swallowing your humor. Another joke. Why do courtesans avoid bathhouses during the day? Because nothing says suspicious like fainting in public with a side of herbal steam. You chuckle softly, the sound lost in the hiss of the water. She grips the tub's edge, her knuckles white, and you realize she's not just fighting biology, she's fighting time. Every minute in that water is a minute closer to discovery, demotion, or worse. The brothel doesn't care about her pain. They care about her profitability. A baby ruins the illusion, and illusions are the currency of Yoshiwara. Here's a third quip to keep the rhythm. What's a courtesan's least favorite bath? The one where the water's hotter than her client's poetry and twice as painful. You let out a quiet laugh, but it feels like a betrayal in this stifling room. The water's surface ripples as she shifts, her breathing ragged now, the stone talisman clutched tight. If this works, the pregnancy ends, and she's back to pouring sake by nightfall. If it doesn't, she's climbing that ladder of desperation to darker methods, midwives, maybe, or worse. The steam swirls, carrying the scent of mugwort and fear, and you think back to that cracked teacup from the first night fragile, still serving, just like her. She's enduring, but at what cost? The pain is silent, but it screams in her clenched jaw, her trembling hands. You step back, the heat overwhelming, the air tasting of herbs and desperation. Outside, the brothel hums with laughter and music, oblivious to the war she's waging. The rain picks up, drumming on the roof like a warning, and you wonder how many others have sat in this tub, praying for a miracle, fearing the consequences. The shamisen's distant notes weave through the steam, mournful and slow, pulling you deeper into her story. This isn't just a bath, it's a battlefield, and she's fighting alone. The stone by the tub glints faintly, a small, stubborn hope in a world that offers none. You want to reach out, to tell her she's not alone. But in Yoshiwara, words are dangerous, and silence is her only ally. You're back in the humid heart of Yoshiwara, the air heavy with the scent of lacquered wood and the faint tang of sake lingering like a bad decision. You're trailing a courtesan through a narrow hallway, her geta clacking softly, her kimono hiding more than just her silhouette. The lanterns cast long shadows, dancing across the paper screens like they're mocking her secret. She's not gliding with her usual grace tonight. Her steps are careful, deliberate, as if every movement is a calculated lie. You're about to witness one of Yoshiwara's most desperate acts, finding the truth, wrapping her body so tightly it's like squeezing the life out of her future. This is the harobi, the stomach binding technique, a makeshift corset of cloth and willpower that's as much about hiding a pregnancy as it is about preserving the illusion that keeps her alive in this floating world. You slip into her room, the space small and cluttered with mirrors and silk, the air thick with the scent of camellia oil she uses to smooth her skin. She's unraveling long strips of white cloth, each one thin but strong, like the rules that bind her life. The harobi isn't just about concealment, it's about control, squeezing her waist until the curve of a growing belly disappears, turning her into the flat, stomached fantasy the brothel demands. You watch her wrap the cloth around her torso, layer after layer, pulling it tight enough to make you wince. It's like watching someone mummify their own hope. Each loop of fabric a silent prayer that no one notices the truth. Breathing becomes a luxury, digestion, a distant memory, and sitting down, forget it. But in Yoshiwara, comfort is optional, image is everything. The odd detail catches you. A small embroidered flower on one of the cloth strips, a delicate touch in this brutal ritual, like a love note to the self she's suffocating. It's almost poetic, until you remember it's there to hide a life she can't keep. Historians still debate whether harobi was more about physical concealment or psychological endurance. Some argue it gave courtesans a fleeting sense of control. Others say it was just another punishment, trading one pain for another. Either way, you're watching her transform into a glamorous sushi roll, her body compressed until she can stand straight, smile serene, and pour tea without a hint of the chaos beneath. In 1789, during the Kansei era, a Yoshiwara ordinance banned visible pregnancies among courtesans, citing disruption of business. That's your canonical event. A cold reminder that the brothel's rules were law, and breaking them meant exile or worse. You feel the air grow tighter, as if the room itself is holding its breath. She adjusts her posture, standing ramrod, straight to keep the pressure on her womb, because slouching means loosening the bind, and loosening means discovery. Discovery means doom. Some courtesans sleep with the binding on, as if constant pressure could convince biology to back off. It doesn't, of course. At best, it delays the inevitable. At worst, it brings complications, ruptured tissues, dizziness, internal bleeding. You wince as she ties the final knot, her fingers steady, but her eyes distant, like she's already bracing for the next client's pawing hands. She has to dance, flirt, recite poetry about cherry blossoms, all while her body screams under the cloth's grip. It's survival, not vanity, and it's as painful as it is precise. Let's lighten the mood for a second. Why did the courtesan perfect her binding technique? Because nothing says, I'm fine, like a waist so tight you can hear your organs applauding. You smirk, but the humor fades fast, swallowed by the room's quiet tension. Another joke. Imagine her explaining this to a modern tailor. Make it quick, make it tight, and make sure it hides my entire future. You chuckle softly, the sound blending with the faint creak of the floorboards. But the reality pulls you back. She's not just hiding a pregnancy, she's hiding her humanity, wrapping it away to keep the brothel's illusion intact. The clients don't want reality, they want a dream, and a visible bump is a nightmare that sends them running. Here's a third quip to keep the rhythm. What's a courtesan's favorite workout? Binding her waist until she can't breathe, cardio and secrecy in one. You let out a quiet laugh, but it feels like a betrayal in this stifling room. You think back to that cracked teacup from the first night, fragile, still serving, just like her. The binding might buy her time, but it's a ticking clock. If the cloth slips, if a maid notices, if a client's hand lingers too long, the game is up. The shamisen's notes drift in from the hall, slow and mournful, like they're mourning her already. She adjusts her kimono over the binding, checks her reflection, and forces a smile that could fool a god. But you see the truth, the sweat on her brow, the slight tremble in her hands. You step back, the air cooler now, carrying a hint of rain from outside, as if the sky knows what she's enduring. The binding holds for now, but biology doesn't care about silk or secrets. She's fighting a war against her own body, and the brothel's eyes are everywhere, waiting for a slip. The lanterns flicker, casting shadows that seem to whisper, "Hurry." You want to reach out, to loosen the cloth, to tell her she's more than this illusion. But in Yoshiwara, words are dangerous, and silence is her shield. The music swells, pulling you deeper into her story, where every knot tied is a knot in her heart, and survival means hiding the truth at any cost. You're still in the dim, perfumed haze of Yoshiwara, where the air feels like it's woven from silk and secrets. The faint twang of a shamisen hums through the walls, but you're in a cramped back room, the kind where shadows cling tighter than the courtesan's obi. She's kneeling on a worn tatami mat, her hands trembling as she unwraps a small cloth bundle. Inside, a rice ball, glistening with sake and flecked with crushed ginger, sits like a strange offering to some forgotten god. This isn't dinner, it's folklore medicine, a desperate remedy soaked in superstition and hope. You're about to witness one of Yoshiwara's oddest rituals, where food becomes a weapon in the quiet war against biology, and every bite is a prayer that the future might dissolve like yesterday's gossip. You watch her lift the rice ball, its surface slick and pungent, the vinegar's tang mixing with the room's camellia oil scent. The logic is shaky, whispered between courtesans like a ghost story. Fermented food's sake, vinegar, maybe a dash of pickled plum could weaken the womb, wash away the seed before it takes root. It's part science, mostly myth, but in a world where your body isn't yours, you cling to anything that feels like control. She chants softly, a verse passed down from older girls. Return to the river, little child, for now is not your time. It's haunting, like a lullaby for someone who'll never be born. She takes a bite, wincing at the taste despair with a side of nausea, served cold. You feel the weight of it, the naive hope that a soggy rice ball could rewrite fate. An odd detail catches your eye, a tiny knot of red thread tied around the cloth, a charm for luck, as if luck ever visits this room. It's almost sweet, until you remember it's a lifeline in a sea of desperation. Historians still debate whether these food-based remedies were widespread or just the fever dreams of trapped women. Some say they were common in Yoshiwara's underground network. Others argue they were rare, too absurd to be effective. Either way, you're watching her chew slowly, her face, a mask of determination, as if willpower alone could make this work. In 1742, during the Kanpo era, a brothel maid was punished for smuggling fermented remedies to a courtesan. Her crime recorded as disrupting order, your canonical event, proof that even rice balls could spark a scandal in this tightly controlled world. You shift, the tatami creaking under you, the air heavy with the scent of sake and fear. The rice ball might do nothing but upset her stomach, or it might make her sick enough to hide the symptoms under bad fish complaints. But it's not about results, it's about hope, fragile as that red thread. She swallows hard, her throat tight, and you imagine the stories she's heard. One girl swore by garlic and plum, another claimed vinegar, soaked rice worked in a week. It's a placebo at best, a poison at worst. But in Yoshiwara, you try anything to keep the secret. She has to keep performing, smiling at clients who drone on about rice taxes while her body rebels. It's like juggling flaming torches in a 12-layer kimono, impressive until it's not. Let's lighten the mood. Why did the courtesan eat sake-soaked rice? Because it's the only meal that comes with a side of, maybe this'll fix everything. You smirk, but the humor sours fast, like the vinegar in her hand. Another joke. Imagine her pitching this to a modern chef. Can you make it quick, spicy, and abortive? Oh, and wrap it in folklore. You chuckle softly, the sound swallowed by the room's quiet tension. She takes another bite, her eyes distant, maybe picturing a life where she could eat for pleasure, not survival. But here, every bite is a bet, and the odds aren't kind. If this fails, she's back to teas, baths, or the basin's grim tools, each step darker, riskier. Here's a third quip. What's a courtesan's least favorite recipe? The one that promises miracles, but delivers cramps and a side of regret. You let out a quiet laugh, but it feels hollow, like the shamisen's fading notes outside. You think back to that cracked teacup from the first night fragile, still serving, just like her. The rice ball is gone now, the cloth folded neatly, as if tidying up can erase the act. She adjusts her kimono, checks her reflection in a small bronze mirror, and forces a smile that could fool a samurai. But you see the truth, the sweat on her brow, the slight tremble in her fingers as she tucks the red thread away, a charm that didn't work. You step back, the air cooler now, carrying a hint of rain from a crack in the window, as if the world outside weeps for her. The brothel's rhythm hums on laughter, clinking cups, a client's slurred poem, but in here, it's just her and the weight of what she's done. The rice ball was a long shot, a whisper of hope in a world that offers none. If it works, she's safe for another night. If it doesn't, the ladder of desperation waits, each rung more dangerous than the last. The shamisen's melody drifts in, slow and mournful, like it's singing for the child that might never be. You want to reach out, to tell her she's more than this ritual. But in Yoshiwara, silence is her only shield, and hope is a rice ball soaked in regret. You're still weaving through the shadowed corridors of Yoshiwara, where the air is heavy with the scent of incense and the weight of unspoken truths. The distant laughter of clients and the soft pluck of a shamisen fade as you follow a courtesan into a quiet alcove, her movements careful, her fan clutched like a shield. The lantern light barely reaches here, casting her face in half shadow, but you can see the tension in her eyes, the way they dart to the door as if expecting it to slide open with bad news. You're about to confront the cruelest truth of her world, the father's silence. In Yoshiwara, a pregnancy isn't a shared burden, it's hers alone, and the men who caused it vanish faster than a sake buzz. You're here to see what happens when she dares to hope for help, only to find emptiness where a partner should be. You imagine her stealing a moment with a client, maybe that poet from earlier, the one who whispered about cherry blossoms like they were love letters. He's a regular, bringing her small gifts, a lacquered comb, a poem on rice paper, making her believe, just for a second, that he sees her as more than a transaction. But when she hints at trouble, maybe a soft, "I'm late," whispered between sake pores, his face changes. The poetry stops, his eyes go cold, and suddenly he's got urgent business in Osaka permanently. You watch her now, sitting alone, folding and unfolding that rice paper poem, its ink smudged from her fingers. It's a small, odd detail, that smudge, like a bruise on her hope, proof she held onto something that was never hers. These men, samurai, merchants, poets, aren't here for consequences. They pay for a fantasy, a world where they're the hero and a baby. That's a plot twist they didn't sign up for. You feel the sting of it, the way her shoulders slump when she realizes he's gone for good. In 1703, during the Genroku era, a high-ranking samurai caused a scandal by publicly denying a courtesan's claim of paternity. His rejection recorded in court documents to protect his clan's honor. That's your canonical event. A stark reminder that in Edo society, reputation trumped responsibility. Men could walk away, leaving the courtesan to face the brothel's wrath alone. Historians still debate whether some clients ever cared. Some argue rare gifts of gold coins suggest guilt. Others say it was just hush money to keep the fantasy intact. You shift, the tatami rustling under you, the air thick with the scent of her camellia oil, now tinged with something sour, like fear. Most clients are married, or they're officials, nobles, merchants with businesses to protect. A child with a courtesan is illegitimate, a scandal that could cost them everything: family ties, social standing, even trade deals. So they ghost, slipping out of Yoshiwara like shadows, leaving no trace except maybe a few coins passed to a servant with a muttered, "Take care of it." You imagine her whispering to that poet, hoping for a promise, a plan, only to get silence. It's not just personal, it's cultural, a tradition of turning away, pretending the courtesan is a dream, not a woman with a swelling belly. Let's lighten the mood for a second. Why do Yoshiwara clients make such great magicians? Because they can disappear faster than you can say, "paternity test." You smirk, but the humor feels thin, like the paper screens around you. Another joke. Imagine her sending a letter to a client. "Dear Samurai, congrats, you're a dad," only to get a reply of, "New phone, who dis?" You chuckle softly, the sound swallowed by the alcove's quiet. But the reality pulls you back. She's alone, clutching that smudged poem, knowing she can't expect loyalty. Even if a client wanted to help, the barriers are steep. Legal ties, social shame, the brothel's iron grip. A few might slip her gold, but it's not love, it's damage control, and it's never enough. Here's a third quip. What's a courtesan's least favorite love poem? The one that ends with, "I'll call you," and a blank scroll. You let out a quiet laugh, but it fades into the stillness. You think back to that cracked teacup from the first night fragile, still serving, just like her. She folds the poem away, tucking it into her obi, and rises to face another night of clients. Her smile, a mask that hides the ache. The silence isn't just his absence, it's the weight of a world that expects her to carry everything: debt, shame, secrets, while he walks free. The shamisen's notes drift in, slow and mournful, like they're singing for the trust she lost. You step back, the air cooler now, carrying a hint of rain from a cracked window, as if the sky mourns her solitude. Outside, Yoshiwara buzzes with laughter and clinking cups, but here, it's just her and the echo of his departure. She'll keep performing, pouring sake, flattering men who'll never know her pain, because that's the job. But the father's silence isn't just personal, it's a system, a culture that erases her humanity. You want to tell her she's not alone, that her strength is louder than their absence. But in Yoshiwara, words are risky, and silence is her only armor. The music swells, pulling you deeper into her story, where every empty promise is another weight she carries alone. You're back in the pulsing heart of Yoshiwara, where the air is thick with the cloying sweetness of incense and the sharp tang of sake. But now you're pressed against a paper screen, the thin barrier trembling with every laugh and clink from the main hall. The shamisen's notes weave through the noise, but they can't drown out the tension in the room you've slipped into. A courtesan stands in the corner, her silhouette rigid, her hands clutching her obi as if it's the only thing holding her together. Her secret's out. Someone noticed the slight curve beneath her kimono, or maybe a maid whispered about a missed cycle. The brothel knows, and in Yoshiwara, that's not just a problem, it's the apocalypse, complete with cold stares, snapped fans, and no hope of a baby shower. You're about to witness the brothel's cold punishment, where a pregnancy doesn't just end a career, it erases a woman. You feel the air shift, heavier now, like the room itself is judging her. The oiran, the brothel's overseer, looms nearby, her fan flicking with the precision of a metronome, each snap a verdict. The courtesan's eyes are downcast, her powder-perfect face betraying nothing, but you can sense the storm inside. Fear, shame, and a desperate wish to rewind time. The brothel isn't just her workplace, it's her world, her jailer, her judge. It controls her sleep, her smile, her very breath, and pregnancy breaks the golden rule. Don't disrupt the illusion. You're not a person here, you're a product, and a product that can't perform is defective. The punishment varies. Some houses demote you to the lowest ranks, serving clients who smell like old sake and self-pity. Others lock you away until the problem is gone. The worst cast you out, penniless, with a reputation that slams every door shut. An odd detail catches your eye. A single hairpin lies discarded on the floor, its lacquered cherry blossom glinting in the lantern light, like a fallen star from her once perfect hair. It's a small thing, but it feels like a symbol of everything she's losing: her status, her beauty, her place in this floating world. Historians still debate whether brothels enforced these punishments out of cruelty or necessity. Some argue it was about maintaining profit in a ruthless business. Others say it was about control, ensuring no woman dare dream beyond her role. Either way, you're watching her face the consequences of a system that commodifies her body and criminalizes her humanity. In 1779, during the Tenmei era, A Yoshiwara brothel was temporarily shut down after a scandal involving a pregnant courtesan who was publicly shamed. That's your canonical event. A chilling reminder that the brothel's wrath was as public as it was brutal. You shift, the tatami creaking under you, the sound swallowed by the Oran's sharp voice, listing her offenses. Carelessness, disrupting business, tarnishing our name. The courtesan nods, her silence louder than any defense. The whispers started weeks ago, her slower steps, her paler face, the way she avoided certain clients. Then came the surveillance. Maids trailing her, friends questioned, her every move watched, like she's a thief in her own home. Now, the verdict. Demotion is likely. She'll serve the rougher crowd. Men with no poetry in their souls, only demands. Or worse, confinement, locked in a room until she resolves it, no questions asked. You feel the walls closing in, the air thick with judgment, as if the screens themselves are sneering. Exile looms, too no money, no future, just a silk bundle of shame and a warning to others. Don't break the rules. Let's lighten the mood for a moment. Why don't brothels throw baby showers? Because the only gift you'd get is a one-way ticket to the street, wrapped in regret. You smirk, but it's fleeting, the Oiron's fans snapping shut like a guillotine. Another joke. Imagine the brothel's employee handbook. Step 1, charm clients. Step 2, don't get pregnant, or we'll make you wish you were a haiku instead. You chuckle softly, the sound lost in the room's oppressive quiet. But the reality hits hard. She's not just losing her status, she's losing herself. The brothel's punishment isn't just about money, it's about erasing her, making her a cautionary tale for the others. You think back to that cracked teacup from the first night, fragile, still serving, but now it's shattered, like her. Here's a third quip. What's a courtesan's worst performance review? Great smile, but your uterus is bad for business. You let out a quiet laugh, but it feels like a betrayal in this stifling room. The Oiron turns away, her verdict delivered, and the courtesan is led to a back room. Her fate unclear: demotion, confinement, or worse. The hall outside buzzes with laughter, clients oblivious, the shamisen playing on like nothing's wrong. But you know the truth. This is a machine, and she's a cog that's no longer useful. The hairpin glints on the floor, forgotten, like her dreams. You want to pick it up, to hand it back, to tell her she's more than this punishment. But in Yoshiwara, words are dangerous, and silence is her only shield. You step back, the air cooler now, carrying a hint of rain from outside, as if the sky weeps for her. The brothel's rhythm continues. Music, clinking cups, forced laughter, but here, it's a funeral for her future. The punishment isn't just personal. It's a warning to every woman in silk. Stay perfect, or pay the price. The shamisen's notes linger, slow and mournful, pulling you deeper into her story, where every snap of a fan is a door slamming shut, and survival means swallowing the pain. You're no longer in the suffocating brothel. Its lanterns and laughter a distant glow now, like stars you can't quite touch. Instead, you're in the inky darkness of a side street in Edo, the air sharp with the scent of wet cobblestones and the faint tang of charcoal from a dying street vendor's fire. You're trailing a woman, her cloak plain and heavy, her face hidden beneath a wide-brimmed hat, her geta muffled by the mud. She's not gliding like a courtesan anymore, she's running, her breath ragged, her hands clutching a small bundle of belongings. This is the moment of escape, the desperate dash from Yoshiwara's gilded cage, where a pregnant courtesan, chooses the unknown over the brothel's wrath. You're about to witness the terrifying hope of a ninja Joro, a runaway prostitute chasing a freedom that's as dangerous as it is fragile. You keep pace, your heart thudding in time with her hurried steps, the narrow alley twisting like a snake through the city's underbelly. She's branded a traitor now, her contract broken, her value to the brothel reduced to zero. Running isn't just defiance, it's illegal. In Yoshiwara, you're property, and property doesn't get to walk away, especially with a baby on board. The brothel's enforcers, bounty hunters, with no poetry in their souls, will be after her soon, their lanterns sweeping the streets like predators. You see her glance back, eyes wide under the hat's brim, searching for shadows that move too purposefully. She slips into a cart meant for laundry, her body folding small, her breath held as a drunken merchant stumbles past, oblivious. It's cinematic, almost heroic, until you remember the stakes. Capture means punishment, public shame, or worse. An odd detail catches your eye, a single hairpin, its lacquered cherry blossom glinting in the moonlight, tucked into her bundle like a relic of her former life. It's strange, a piece of Yoshiwara's beauty carried into this gritty escape, as if she can't fully let go. Historians still debate whether these escapes were common or rare. Some argue many courtesans fled successfully, blending into villages or shrines. Others say most were caught, their stories buried to deter others. Either way, you're watching a woman gamble everything on a sliver of hope. In 1804, during the Bunka era, a famous escape rocked Yoshiwara when a high-ranking courtesan vanished, rumored to have hidden in a barrel shipped out of the district that's your canonical event. Proof that running was possible, but never easy. You feel the chill now, the rain soaking through your clothes, mirroring her fear-soaked resolve. She's aiming for anywhere but here, a cousin's farm, a mountain shrine, a fishing village where questions are as rare as sake, places where Yoshiwara's name closes doors, not opens them. She might disguise herself as a pilgrim, her hair undone, her face smudged with ash to erase the courtesan's polish. But freedom isn't a destination. It's a cage of its own, one where you trade silk for survival, makeup for anonymity. You imagine her hiding in a barn, the baby's weight growing, wondering if she'll ever stop looking over her shoulder. Some escapees become legends, whispers of a courtesan turned nun, reading fortunes in the hills, but most just vanish, their fates unwritten, their courage uncelebrated. Let's lighten the mood for a moment. Why did the courtesan run so fast? Because she wanted to outpace her contract and those bounty hunters with zero chill. You smirk, but the humor fades in the alley's damp silence. Another joke. Imagine her leaving a note for the Oran. Gone fishing, back never. As if paperwork could stop a manhunt. You chuckle softly, the sound swallowed by the rain's steady drum. But the reality pulls you back. She's not running for glory or revenge, just for a chance to breathe free, to give her child a life beyond the brothel's shadow. The risks are brutal. Capture means flogging, branding, or a return to worse conditions. Some don't make it, betrayed by a loose tongue or a hungry informant. Here's a third quip. What's a courtesan's favorite escape plan? The one where she's faster than the brothel's abacus and sneakier than a haiku's hidden meaning. You let out a quiet laugh, but it feels like a whisper in this dark alley. You think back to that cracked teacup from the first night fragile, still serving, but now it's abandoned, like her old life. She ducks behind a stack of barrels, her breath catching as lantern light sweeps nearby, a hunter's call echoing faintly. She's a ghost now, slipping through Ito's veins, her future as uncertain as the rain-soaked path ahead. The shamisen's notes are gone, replaced by the city's pulse footsteps, creaking carts, a dog's distant bark. You linger, the rain cold against your skin, the air tasting of mud and defiance. She moves again, disappearing around a corner, her cloak blending with the night. The hairpin in her bundle glints, one last time, a spark of beauty in a world that's turned harsh. You want to follow, to see if she makes it, to tell her her courage is louder than the brothel's rules. But in Yoshiwara's shadow, words are dangerous, and silence is her only ally. The rain falls harder, washing away her tracks, pulling you deeper into her story, where every step is a rebellion, and hope is the scariest luxury of all. You're no longer in the rain-soaked alleys of Ito, but back inside Yoshiwara's suffocating embrace, where the air hums with the scent of camellia oil and the sharp edge of fear. You're in a hidden corner of the brothel, a storage closet barely lit by a flickering candle, its light trembling like the woman kneeling on the cold tatami. She's alone, her kimono loosened, her hands clutching a bundle of towels as she braces against the wall. The secret she's carried, through teas, baths, and bindings, has grown too heavy to hide. You're about to witness a silent delivery, a birth cloaked in shadows, where motherhood arrives, not with joy, but with urgency and terror. In Yoshiwara, a baby isn't a miracle, it's a liability, and giving birth means risking everything to keep it quiet. You feel the air thicken, the closet's walls pressing in, the distant shamisen muffled by the pounding in your ears. She's chosen this moment, deep in the night, when the brothel's revelry slows, to bring life into a world that doesn't want it. No midwives here, no cheerful attendants, just her, maybe a trusted servant girl who knows how to boil water and keep her mouth shut. She stuffs a cloth in her mouth to muffle the pain, her breath ragged, her eyes wide with a mix of determination and dread. You watch her body tense, then release, the act as silent as it is sacred. The towels soak up blood and secrets, and when it's over, a tiny bundle of life lies in her arms, wrapped in a scrap of silk, its cries stifled by her trembling hands. This isn't a nursery, it's a battlefield, and she's fighting to keep them both alive. An odd detail catches your eye, a small bamboo comb tucked into her hair, its teeth worn from years of use, a quiet reminder of her identity as she faces this moment of transformation. It's strange, almost tender, in a scene so raw and desperate. Historians still debate whether these secret births were common or carefully concealed anomalies. Some argue courtesans found ways to protect their children in hidden rooms. Others say most were forced to let go, the evidence erased, to preserve the brothel's illusion. Either way, you're watching a woman defy the rules, giving birth in a closet, because the main hall offers no mercy. In 1791, during the Kansi era, a Yoshiwara brothel was rumored to have a secret room for such deliveries. Its existence denied, but whispered about in court records. That's your canonical event, proof that these births happened, hidden in plain sight. You shift, the tatami creaking softly, the candle's flame dancing like it's nervous too. The baby's presence changes everything. She can't keep it long, not here. Some are taken away immediately, handed to a servant or an old courtesan who knows the paths to shrines or orphanages. Others are hidden for days, tucked in corners, fed in silence, loved with a desperation that breaks your heart. You imagine her whispering to the child, naming it in her mind. Hana, perhaps for the flowers she'll never see grow. But the brothel's rhythm doesn't stop. Clients still wait, the Oiron's fan still snaps, and she has to return to the hall, her face powdered, her smile flawless, as if nothing happened. The physical toll is brutal. No rest, no care, just a quick splash of water to clean the blood before she's back to pouring sake. Let's lighten the mood for a moment. Why don't Yoshiwara babies get lullabies? Because the only song they hear is the shamisen, and it's not exactly twinkle twinkle, you smirk, but the humor feels fragile, like the candle's flame. Another joke. Imagine her trying to explain this to a client. Sorry, I'm late. Had to deliver a baby between tea servings. You chuckle softly, the sound swallowed by the closet stillness. But the reality pulls you back. She's not just hiding a child, she's hiding her soul, knowing the brothel won't allow innocence to linger. If she's lucky, a retired courtesan might help, bringing towels, whispering prayers. But the baby's future is a question no one dares answer. Adoption, abandonment, or worse, none of the paths are kind. Here's a third quip. What's a courtesan's worst postpartum plan? Pretending the baby's just a really heavy obi and hoping no one notices. You let out a quiet laugh, but it fades into the air, heavy with the scent of blood and silk. You think back to that cracked teacup from the first night fragile, still serving, just like her. She wraps the child tighter, her fingers brushing the bamboo comb as she adjusts her hair, preparing to face the world again. The candle gutters, casting shadows that seem to mourn. Outside, the brothel hums laughter, clinking cups, oblivious clients. But in here, it's a silent miracle. A life born in secrecy, loved for a fleeting moment before the world demands she let go. You step back, the air cooler now, carrying a hint of rain through a crack in the wall, as if the sky knows what she's endured. The shamisen's notes drift in, slow and mournful, like a lullaby for a child who can't stay. She rises, her body aching, her heart heavier than the silk she wears. The delivery is over, but the real fight is just beginning, hiding the child, hiding herself, surviving another night. You want to reach out, to hold the baby for her, to tell her she's more than this closet's shadows. But in Yoshiwara, words are dangerous, and silence is her only shield. The candle flickers out, pulling you deeper into her story, where every birth is a secret, and every secret is a wound. You're standing at the edge of Yoshiwara, where the lantern-lit alleys give way to the quiet darkness of Edo's outskirts. The air is cool, heavy with the scent of damp moss and fading rain, a stark contrast to the perfumed haze of the pleasure district. You're following a courtesan, her cloak plain, her steps silent, as she moves toward a small stone shrine tucked under ancient pines. In her arms, a tightly swaddled bundle, a child, born in secret, now destined for a fate no mother should face. This is the world of Mizuko, the water children, the spirits of the unborn or abandoned, lingering between worlds like the women who carried them. You're about to witness the final act of her story, a whispered ritual of apology and loss, where love and grief are woven into offerings left under moonlight. You kneel beside her at the shrine, its weathered stones carved with faded prayers, the air thick with the scent of incense and old sorrow. She places a small red bib around a Jizo statue, the Buddhist guardian of children, its face worn smooth by years of offerings. Her hands tremble as she lights a stick of incense, its smoke curling upward like a sigh she can't release. Mizuko, literally water children, are the souls of those who never grew, aborted or abandoned, haunting the edges of Yoshiwara's floating world. They mirror the courtesans themselves, existing in a liminal space, adored yet discarded, present yet unseen. She whispers, "I'm sorry," not because she didn't love the child, but because this world gave her no room to show it. The ritual is small, private, a flickering apology in a life that allows no motherhood. An odd detail catches your eye. A tiny wooden toy, a spinning top, tucked into the bib's fold, a heartbreaking gesture for a child who'll never play. It's strange, almost cruel in its innocence, a reminder of what might have been. Historians still debate whether Mizuko Kuyo rituals were widespread among courtesans or a private act of defiance. Some argue they were a way to reclaim agency. Others say they were a desperate plea for forgiveness in a society that offered none. Either way, you're watching her honor a spirit she can't hold, her fingers brushing the Jizo's stone face, as if it could carry her love to the child she left behind. In 1809, during the Bunka era, a temple outside Yoshiwara recorded an unusual number of Mizuko Kuyo offerings. Linked to a crackdown on courtesan pregnancies, that's your canonical event, proof that these rituals were real. Etched into the margins of history, you feel the air grow heavier, the pine needles rustling softly, as if the shrine itself is listening. She places a folded prayer paper beside the bib, its ink smudged from her tears, and you imagine the words she can't say aloud. "Find peace, little one." Some courtesans return to these shrines year after year, lighting incense for names they never spoke. Others come once and never look back. The wound too raw. The brothel doesn't care her absence tonight will be noted, her excuses scrutinized. She'll return to the hall, her kimono perfect, her smile a mask. But the weight of this moment will linger, a ghost as real as the child she couldn't keep. The incense burns low, its smoke blending with the mist, carrying her grief into the night. Let's lighten the mood for a moment. Why do Mizuko shrines always have the best incense? Because even the gods know these prayers need a little extra to reach the heavens. You smirk, but the humor feels fragile, like the spinning top by the statue. Another joke. Imagine her explaining this to a client. "Sorry, I'm late. Had to drop off a prayer for my water child between sake pours." You chuckle softly, the sound swallowed by the shrine's quiet. But the reality pulls you back. She's not just mourning, she's surviving, carrying a loss no one acknowledges in a world that demands she forget. The Jizo statue stares blankly, its red bib fluttering in the breeze, a silent witness to her pain. Here's a third quip. What's a courtesan's favorite bedtime story? The one where the Mizuko find peace, and she gets to sleep without ghosts. You let out a quiet laugh, but it fades into the stillness, the incense's last curl fading into the dark. You think back to that cracked teacup from the first night fragile, still serving, just like her. She rises, her cloak brushing the ground, and adjusts her hat to hide her face. The shamisen's notes are gone, replaced by the soft hum of wind through the pines. She's carrying the Mizuko's weight, a spirit as heavy as the silk she wears. But she'll return to Yoshiwara, to the laughter and lanterns, as if nothing happened. You linger at the shrine, the air cooler now, the mist settling like a gentle hand. The red bib sways, the spinning top still, a frozen moment of love in a world that forbids it. You want to stay, to light another incense, to tell her she's not alone, but in Yoshiwara, words are dangerous, and silence is her only shield. The pines whisper, pulling you deeper into her story, where every offering is a wound, and every prayer a defiance of a world that tried to erase her. You step back from the shrine, the world softening around you, the sharp edges of Yoshiwara blurring into the mist. The lanterns, the laughter, the weight of silk and secrets they fade, leaving only the quiet strength of the women who endured. You see her now, not as a courtesan, but as a mother, a daughter, a survivor, her heart heavier than the 12 layers she wore. The red bib on the Jizo statue sways gently, a whisper of love that outlasts the brothel's rules. These women weren't just shadows in Ito's floating world. They were warriors, painting resilience with every smile, hiding pain behind every fan. Their stories, buried in silence, still echo, reminding you that strength isn't loud, it's the quiet endurance of those who carry the unbearable. You feel the night settle, the air cool and calm, like a lullaby for the forgotten. Turn down the lights, let the fan hum softly, and rest. Their spirits are at peace, and so are you.